All right, so get this. Today, we're tackling a theory that might just turn everything you thought you knew about the Bible upside down. Like, what if the Garden of Eden wasn't actually in Mesopotamia?
You're going straight for the big one, huh? Yeah, the idea that Eden could have been in Jerusalem, that's definitely a head-scratcher for a lot of people.
Exactly. And that's what this whole deep dive is about. We're digging into an excerpt called Texto Pagado, the theory of Jerusalem as the original Garden of Eden. It's going to get wild as we go through biblical clues, prophetic symbolism. We'll even touch on eschatology a bit.
You know, the end time stuff.
Right. So, first things first. One of the biggest hints pointing towards Jerusalem is all the mystery around those rivers of Eden, from Genesis. Two of them are the Tigris and Euphrates. No doubt about it, those are Mesopotamian. But then there's this river called the Gihon. And would you believe it, Jerusalem actually has a Gihon spring. Historically, it was super important to the city, more than just a coincidence, maybe.
It's a pretty striking parallel, I'll give you that. And Jewish tradition actually links the Gihon spring to the idea of, messianic renewal. Adds another layer to the whole thing.
No kidding. Okay, and there's more. Genesis says Adam and Eve were sent east of Eden. Now think about it. If Eden was in Mesopotamia, sending them east just puts them further east, right? Doesn't make much sense geographically, unless Eden was actually centered around Jerusalem, making the Judean wilderness to the east their exile spot.
Yeah, this whole East of Eden thing has puzzled people for ages. Really makes you wonder if we've been looking at the map wrong this whole time.
Right. It's like, whoa, hold on. And speaking of maps, the way the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is oriented is pretty interesting too. East of the temple, you have the Garden of Gethsemane and the Mount of Olives. It kind of creates this symbolic line, like the direction Adam and Eve were banished.
And you can't forget that early Christians saw Gethsemane, where Jesus prayed before, they saw it as a gateway to Eden being restored.
Wow, so that east-west orientation ties into all of that too. It's like these pieces start clicking into place when you look at it from this angle. But okay, enough about geography for now. Let's get into the symbolism, the deeper stuff. What about the Jerusalem temple itself? Could it be like a mirror image of Eden built to reflect that original paradise?
There are definitely some interesting parallels there. Think about the Holy of Holies, the most sacred part of the temple, decorated with palm trees and cherubim. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? And even the menorah, with its 7 branches, could be seen as a representation of the tree of life.
So basically, the temple was like a mini Eden smack dab in the middle of Jerusalem.
You could say that. And this idea that the temple reflects creation is even stronger when you look at what rabbinic texts say. They call the temple's foundation stone, the Even Shatia, the navel of the world, like the very center of creation, linking it back to Eden as that first point of connection between God and humans.
Whoa, it's like these layers of symbolism all point to this powerful link between Jerusalem and Eden. But here's where it gets really crazy. There are prophecies in the Bible that seem to link Eden's restoration specifically with Jerusalem.
Right, like the prophet Ezekiel talks about this river flowing from the Temple Mount, and it heals the land wherever it goes. It's incredibly similar to the river of life in Revelation, the one flowing through the New Jerusalem.
It's that idea of healing, isn't it? Physical, emotional, spiritual. We're always searching for it. What if that healing starts right there in Jerusalem?
A powerful thought, for sure. It connects these ancient prophecies to our own desire for a better world. And speaking of healing and restoration, we can't forget about the tree of life.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. It represents eternal life with God in Genesis, but we lost that connection because of, Adam and Eve.
Right, but then the tree of life pops back up in Revelation, and it's in the New Jerusalem, which comes down from heaven. So it represents restoring that relationship with God, that ultimate healing after sin.
So we lose that connection in Eden, and then it's restored in the New Jerusalem, which is connected to earthly Jerusalem. It's a full circle thing.
It is. It's this beautiful, hopeful idea. And to make it even more interesting, some early church fathers, like Augustine, saw Christ himself as the tree of life. His sacrifice opens up a new way to access that tree, a new path to eternal life.
And since Jesus was resurrected in Jerusalem, it makes the city even more significant, right? Like it becomes the potential starting point for Eden's restoration. All these roads lead back to Jerusalem.
It's definitely a captivating idea, isn't it?
Okay.
And it's not just from biblical interpretations either. Jewish mystical traditions, like Kabbalah, connect Eden and Jerusalem in fascinating ways.
Okay, so we've got biblical references, geographic clues, prophecies, even mystical interpretations, and they're all converging on this one possibility. Jerusalem could be the key to unlocking the mystery of Eden.
Yeah.
But let's be real for a second. Not everyone buys into this theory. There are some pretty strong counterarguments out there, too.
Of course, no theory is perfect, right? And one of the biggest criticisms focuses on those two big Mesopotamian rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates. Critics say their presence in Genesis confirms that Eden has got to be in that region.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But people who support the Jerusalem theory have come up with some pretty creative explanations. They suggest those rivers could symbolize something bigger, like entire regions, or maybe ancient waterways that have changed over time because of, how the earth shifts and stuff.
Yeah, like they propose that the Pishon, another river mentioned in Genesis, could actually be linked to the Nile, or maybe a river in the Arabian Peninsula that dried up a long time ago. It's basically rethinking the whole map.
Like trying to solve a puzzle where some of the pieces might be missing?
Exactly. And then there are some skeptics who say that getting hung up on the exact location of Eden kind of misses the point of the Genesis story. The real message, they say, is about humanity messing up big time and God's plan to fix it.
So even if we can't pinpoint the exact spot of Eden, the symbolism, the idea of that paradise lost, it still matters, right? And within that story, Jerusalem is still super important, especially when it comes to the idea of salvation.
Absolutely. It's where Jesus was crucified and resurrected, and in Revelation, it represents the promise of a world made new. So whether or not Eden was literally there, Jerusalem is a central point in how humans connect with God.
Okay, so we've got biblical and prophetic evidence, counterarguments, and even considered some of the skeptical viewpoints. But there's one more piece to this Eden-Jerusalem puzzle that we need to look at: Jewish mystical traditions, specifically Kabbalah.
Now, Kabbalah, that's where things get really interesting. Imagine divine energy flowing down like a tree, each branch representing a different aspect of God. That's kind of how Kabbalists see the Sephiro, these emanations of God's light, and they often depict the Sephiro as a tree, just like the tree of life.
That's such a vivid imagery. So even in mystical traditions, we have this recurring idea of a tree connecting the divine and human realms. And Kabbalistic texts actually say that Jerusalem's Temple Mount is the foundation stone of creation itself.
Exactly, which ties right back to Adam being created from the soil of Eden. It's like a circle, emphasizing how creation and redemption are woven together.
So we've got all these layers: biblical references, geographical clues, prophecies, mystical interpretations. They all seem to be hinting at this one mind-blowing possibility that Jerusalem might actually be the key to understanding the whole mystery of Eden.
It's a concept that has fascinated people for centuries. And even today, it sparks new insights and interpretations, making us question the very nature of paradise, our relationship with God, and ultimately our destiny as humans.
That's a lot to process, that's for sure. We've only just scratched the surface here.
We have. But maybe it's a good moment to pause and let all this sink in for a bit.
Okay.
What are your initial thoughts on all of this? What stands out to you as particularly intriguing or maybe even challenging?
Honestly, my head is still spinning a bit. It's like looking at the Bible and history through a whole new lens. But I gotta say, the symbolism is incredibly powerful. It really makes you wonder if there's something more to Jerusalem than meets the eye.
That's the beauty of exploring these kinds of theories, right? They challenge us to look beyond the surface and consider new possibilities, new ways of interpreting things, new ways of understanding our place in the grand scheme of things. And I think that's a great place to stop for now.
Yeah, I agree. But this conversation is far from over. We'll be back soon to dive even deeper into this fascinating topic. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to our deep dive. Last time we were talking about rivers, symbolism, prophecies, all those clues hinting that Jerusalem might be the real location of the Garden of Eden. And I gotta say, this is where it gets really fascinating for me.
What's caught your attention?
Well, up until now, we've been looking at the past, right? Trying to solve this ancient mystery. But what if this theory also holds clues about the future? If Jerusalem really is where Eden could be restored, doesn't that change everything about how we see the city, its purpose in the world, everything?
You're hitting on a really crucial point. This isn't just about reinterpreting history. It's about grappling with what this could mean for us moving forward. Imagine it. Jerusalem, not just a place of conflict or pilgrimage, but a potential center for, global transformation.
It's a huge concept to grasp. Right now, Jerusalem is a city where so many different faiths and cultures come together. Sometimes they clash, sometimes they coexist. But with this Eden connection, it takes on this cosmic significance, it's woven into the very fabric of creation.
That's beautifully put. And you're right, it does make things more complex. Those struggles over Jerusalem, the political and religious tensions, they suddenly become much more weighty. It's not just about land or historical claims anymore. It becomes a battle for the soul of humanity, wouldn't you say?
Whoa, yeah, that's pretty heavy stuff. But you know what? Even with all that weight, I also feel this sense of hope. We've talked about how brokenness needs healing, right? If that healing, that restoration of Eden could actually happen in Jerusalem, a place that's so symbolically charged, well, wouldn't that give us hope for the whole world?
Absolutely. And it's not a passive hope where we just sit around waiting for something to happen. It's active. It's a call to each of us to actually participate in the process of making things right, to mend those divisions that cause so much pain in the world.
So it's not enough just to believe the theory, we have to live it out, like embody those values of peace, reconciliation, even care for the environment, like we talked about earlier.
Exactly. We need to bring those Edenic ideals into our daily lives, whether we're in Jerusalem or on the other side of the world. Each of us is a piece of this giant puzzle, and every piece matters.
It's funny you should say that, because last time, when we were talking about the Pishon River and how maybe the map of Eden is bigger than we thought, it felt like trying to put together a puzzle where some pieces are missing, or we're not even sure what the full picture is supposed to be.
I love that analogy. And it applies here, too. We're all trying to figure out our place in this grand scheme of things. But back to your point about action. It begins with understanding how connected everything truly is. We make choices every single day. Mm-hmm. What we eat, what we buy, how we treat others, and all those choices have an impact. They make waves.
It's that ripple effect we talked about, right?
Yeah.
Being mindful that our actions, no matter how small, can have consequences, for better or worse.
Exactly. And so it becomes about making choices that align with those core Edenic values. Sustainability, compassion, justice, supporting companies doing good in the world, having conversations with people who have different viewpoints, building bridges instead of walls. These are all ways to participate in this idea of restoration.
I'm trying to picture it. A world where people actually live by those values, where we cooperate instead of competing, where we focus on sharing instead of fighting over resources or beliefs. It's a beautiful vision, but if I'm being honest, it can feel overwhelming to think about changing the world on that scale.
I get it. It's a big task. But there's also something incredibly empowering about it, don't you think? Even the smallest actions, multiplied by millions of people, can create a huge positive impact. Remember, that ripple effect works in both directions. Kindness and compassion are just as contagious as negativity.
So it's not just about hope then, it's about action. And this whole discussion has really hammered home the fact that we're not just spectators in this whole thing. We actually have a role to play in shaping the future.
Absolutely. Whether we fully embrace this theory or not, it reminds us of our own power. The power to restore that sense of paradise, to heal the brokenness both within ourselves and in the world around us.
It's a journey, that's for sure. Not something that happens overnight. It's going to take patience, persistence, and a whole lot of love to get there.
And a willingness to let go of old ways of thinking, to look at the world with fresh eyes and imagine a future that's different from the past, maybe even better.
It's about believing that something better is possible, right?
Yeah.
Something more beautiful, something whole.
Yes, and then taking that belief and putting it into action, step by step, choice by choice.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of spiritual and ecological ground here, but there's one more dimension that we can't ignore, the political one. We can't talk about Jerusalem and Eden without addressing the very real and complex conflict that's happening there. How does this theory of Eden's restoration fit into that reality?
You're absolutely right. It's impossible to ignore. It's a delicate issue, and there are no easy answers. On one hand, this whole idea of Jerusalem as the place where Eden could be restored, it could be seen as reinforcing those existing claims to the city, which could actually make tensions worse.
Yeah, I see what you mean. If one group believes they have a divine right to Jerusalem because of its connection to Eden, that could lead to even more conflict, right?
Exactly. But what if, and this is a big what if we flip the script? Instead of using this theory to justify claims or fuel division, what if we used it to inspire a completely different approach? One based on dialogue, understanding, and a shared vision of peace.
Now that's a radical idea, but I like where you're going with this. Instead of fighting over who has the right to Jerusalem, what if everyone worked together to create a city that truly reflects the values of Eden? A Jerusalem that's a place of peace, harmony, and shared prosperity for everyone, regardless of their faith or background.
Now you're getting it.
Yeah.
It requires a huge shift in perspective, I know. But sometimes the most difficult problems need the most radical solutions, right? And honestly, what's more radical than choosing love over hate, dialogue over violence, and shared prosperity over those zero-sum games?
It's incredibly inspiring, but also a little intimidating. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is so deeply entrenched, so complex. Can a theory about the Garden of Eden really make a difference in that reality?
It's true. No single idea can magically solve a conflict with such a long and painful history. But I do believe this theory can offer a valuable new perspective, a different way of framing the problem and looking for solutions.
Okay, I'm listening. How so?
Think about it this way. If we accept that Jerusalem's the place where Eden could be restored, it means that everyone has a stake in the city's future. It's not just about Israelis and Palestinians, it's about all of us. Jews, Christians, Muslims, people of all faiths and backgrounds, we all share a common ancestry, a common connection to that original garden.
So instead of viewing it as a competition where one side wins and the other loses, we could start seeing it as a collaborative effort to create something entirely new. A Jerusalem that benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our shared humanity, our shared connection to that original paradise. It's about moving beyond those old ideas of winners and losers, of us versus them, and embracing a more inclusive, holistic vision of peace.
It's about remembering that we're all part of something much bigger than ourselves. Our destinies are intertwined, and creating a better future for Jerusalem could mean creating a better future for all of us.
Beautifully said. You're really starting to see the potential here. And it's not just about a change in mindset. It's about concrete actions, about building a Jerusalem that embodies those values of Eden in tangible ways.
All right, let's get practical for a minute. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that this vision of a shared Jerusalem, a Jerusalem that truly reflects the values of Eden, let's say it's actually attainable. What would that look like? What would be the key elements of such a city?
Well, first and foremost, it would have to be a city of justice. A city where everyone, no matter their background, their beliefs, their ethnicity, everyone is treated with equality and respect.
So no discrimination, no oppression, no one group being privileged over another.
Exactly. It would be a city where the rule of law applies equally to everyone and where basic human rights are protected and upheld. A place where everyone feels safe, respected, and valued.
And it goes without saying, it would have to be a city of peace, right? A place where violence is rejected and where conflicts are resolved through dialogue and negotiation, not through force or coercion.
Absolutely. A city where differences are celebrated and embraced, not feared or demonized. Where people from different cultures and backgrounds can live together in harmony and mutual respect.
I love that. But we've also talked about how caring for creation is such an important part of restoring Eden. How would that play out in this shared Jerusalem?
Well, it would have to be a city designed and built with sustainability in mind. A city that prioritizes renewable energy, green spaces, responsible urban planning, all those things we've been discussing.
So a city that's not only just and peaceful, but also ecologically sound and environmentally responsible. A city that recognizes that we're all interconnected with nature and strives to live in harmony with it.
Precisely. Imagine a Jerusalem filled with gardens and parks, where the air is clean, the water is pure, and the sounds of nature replace the sounds of traffic and construction. A city where people can connect with the earth and with each other in meaningful ways.
It's a beautiful vision, a Jerusalem that's not just a holy city, but a just city, a peaceful city, and a sustainable city. A city that truly reflects the best of humanity and those values of Eden.
It is a beautiful vision. And while it might seem far-fetched or even impossible to some, I believe it's a vision worth striving for. After all, if we're not striving for something better, what are we doing?
You know, you mentioned prophets earlier, and there's this line from Isaiah that keeps coming back to me. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore.
What a powerful image of transformation. And who knows, maybe that vision of peace and harmony can start right here in Jerusalem, in the city that some believe was once the Garden of Eden, the place where it all began.
It's a mind-blowing thought, isn't it? That the place where humanity fell from grace could also be the place where we find redemption, where we rebuild paradise, not just for ourselves, but for all of creation.
It's a story that's still being written, and we all have a part to play in how it unfolds.
This is a lot to take in, I have to admit, but I'm also feeling this surge of hope, this sense of possibility that I haven't felt before.
That's the power of ideas. They can challenge us, inspire us, and ultimately transform us. But it's up to us to take those ideas and turn them into action.
So what's next? Where do we go from here?
Well, that's a question we'll explore in our final segment. We've talked about the past, the present, and the future of Jerusalem and Eden. But now it's time to bring it all home, to connect these big ideas to our everyday lives and figure out what role we can play in this unfolding story.
I can't wait. Stay with us. We'll be back soon for the final part of our deep dive. Welcome back. I don't know about you, but after all that, my head is still spinning. We've covered so much ground, from those Mesopotamian rivers all the way to the heart of Jerusalem, prophecies, Jewish mysticism. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. We've been on quite a journey, haven't we? And at the center of it all is this question. Could Jerusalem be the original Garden of Eden? And could it be the place where that paradise is restored?
It's mind-blowing, honestly. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep circling back to one question. What does it all actually mean for us, like here and now in the 21st century? How can we take these ancient ideas about Eden and paradise and make them relevant to our lives today?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's probably why this whole theory is so fascinating. It's not just an intellectual exercise. It's a challenge. It's like an invitation to be part of something much bigger than ourselves.
So how do we bridge that gap, the ancient and the modern? How do we take those big ideas, Eden, paradise, restoration, and make them real in our everyday lives?
I think it starts with a shift in how we think about it all. Instead of just seeing Eden as a physical place, like a dot on a map somewhere, what if we saw it more as a state of being? A way of relating to God, to each other, to nature.
So it's less about going back to some mythical garden and more about cultivating those qualities, the harmony, balance, interconnectedness, but within ourselves and then in the world around us.
Exactly. It's about creating those little Edens, you could say, in our own homes, our communities, even within our own hearts.
I like that. It suddenly feels much more tangible, more achievable. So personal transformation is key then, maybe even more important than trying to change the whole world at once.
I think so. You can't change the world if you haven't changed yourself first. It's like you can't create a more peaceful world if you don't have that peace within you.
So that journey back to Eden, it really starts with an inward journey then, a commitment to personal growth, to our own spiritual development.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And as we go on that inward journey, we can also look outward, see how we can help heal and restore the world around us.
Finding that balance then, inner work and outer work, personal transformation and taking action to change things out in the world.
Precisely. And as we do that work, we try to live more consciously, compassionately, more sustainably. I truly believe it creates ripples of positive change. Change that can spread and actually make a difference.
Like each of us becoming a little seed of Eden, planting ourselves in that fertile ground, our own hearts, and then letting those seeds grow into something beautiful.
I love that image.
Yeah.
Because it really gets to the core of everything we've been discussing. Recognizing that potential for growth and transformation, and then actually nurturing it, letting it unfold.
Wrapping up this whole deep dive, I'm feeling two things. A sense of awe, just at how huge these ideas are, and also a sense of responsibility. Like, what do we do with all of this? How do we live our lives differently because of what we've learned?
I think those are the perfect takeaways. Because at the end of the day, it's up to each of us to decide what this theory, this whole idea of Jerusalem as Eden, really means. Does it inspire us? Does it change how we act, how we treat others, the choices we make? Or is it just a fascinating story, something we file away and forget about?
That's a powerful question. So what will you do, dear listener? What will you do with those seeds of Eden that have been planted in your heart today? Will you nurture them, let them grow, and share their fruits with the world? Or will you let them wither and die?
The answers to those questions, they're in each of us. And the future of our world, maybe even the future of Eden itself, it all depends on the choices we make.
It's a lot to consider, but sometimes even the biggest journeys start with just one step, one tiny seed of hope planted in the right place.
And you never know, that tiny seed, if we care for it, it might just blossom into a new Eden. A world where we live in harmony with each other and with nature. A world where peace and justice are real, and where we feel that divine presence in every breath and every heartbeat.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep growing. And may those seeds of Eden take root and flourish within each of you.